Hey, welcome to this week's wonderful edition of Personality Yoda. This is a show to help you understand everything about personality and how to apply it to your world. My name is Becky, and I am here with the wonderful Jedi Master himself, Mr. Steve Cockram. Steve, how are you today?
I am very well, thank you, Ray. You continue to amaze me with your Padawan learning skills, and one day you will take me out and take my crown. But in the meantime, it's great to have you with me, and always fun doing this with you on a Friday afternoon.
Absolutely, Friday afternoon in the UK. So today, by popular demand, backed by popular demand, I should say, we are looking at parenting. So we have a ton of questions for Steve in terms of how can you tell your kid's personality type, all of this sort of stuff. How do you adapt your parenting styles, different voice types? So we're going to dive into those in a little bit. Before we do, Steve, tell me, how has your week been? What's live in your world? Update us.
Gosh, you always ask me that, don't you? And being a trooper, I always start with the weather, which is absolutely hammering it down. It's miserable here. And I've got a tee-off time at 7:32 tomorrow morning in the competition. So I'm learning how to play in the rain. So that's one thing. It's been a really nice week, actually. It's been not quite as busy as usual. So I've been actually able to do some of the things on my high important, low urgent list for those of you who speak X Factor. And yeah, just good time with the team this week. Lots of exciting things growing and watching my eldest daughter, who's working with us on our little business venture, and being very proud father. So talking about parenting has probably inspired me to be a little bit more intentional this week, knowing that I would feel like a complete hypocrite being defined as the guru on parenting when actually Helen is the real guru on most things, and parenting being exhibit A. So there's me. What about you? What have you been up to?
Gosh, weeks just fly by. We're going down to Cornwall this weekend, which is near the sea, really, in the UK. But the weather is awful, like it's so bad. Steve was like, I hope you've got a backup plan. And I'm thinking, yeah, I might need to actually, because it is just so shocking. I mean, classic Brits, here we are talking about the weather again. So apologies to any Americans out there or anyone else who is very bored about talking about the weather. So, Steve, before we get started into today's topic, tell us a bit about how you want the show to work and what you want from the audience.
You ask me that every week, and I think I'll probably change it every time as I refine and hone in true Pioneer Connector style. So I think the foundation, I would say, is the healthiest lives know how to do relationships well. So the people that I watch that are most secure, the most confident, the most humble, often the most fulfilled in what they do, they know themselves. They're able to look in the mirror. They own their tendencies. They're very self-aware. They're very emotionally intelligent, and they know how to connect with people. So I'll often say that relationships, the currency of wealth and influence in the new world. So Personality Yoda is really helping you hopefully go, how do I do relationships well? And it doesn't really matter whether that's with your kids, your spouse, your friends, your family, your teammates, your boss, your investors. In some ways, the ability to know why people behave the way they do, and for you to show up and be able to have influence in those relationships, that's really the heart of what we're doing. But it's really interesting to me that the biggest felt need for most senior executives and teams I've worked with around the world is parenting is usually number two. Number one is, how do I make a marriage work? Because those who are highly successful in work usually have let's just say they haven't always invested the same amount of discipline and the same amount of time in making sure that everything at home works. So no surprise to me that we've had a deluge of requests in relation to parenting, people going, how do I replace the 15 years I should have done already? So there we go. We know who you are.
I love it. So please do post any questions you have on parenting or family life in the box below, and we will pose those to Steve as we go throughout today's show, or even next week's show. You never know. We'll just continue on this theme. Okay, so Steve, last week we had loads of questions around how can I tell my kid's personality? So I'd love you to go into a bit more depth. So how do you recognize each of the different voices? And then after you've answered that one, I'd love to talk more around parenting tips. So how do you really call up a different voice type to get the best out of your children? Thoughts on that?
I think we did Pioneer last time, and I vaguely remember doing Nurturer, but I'll do Nurturer again because they always get left out. So this is where they get a double portion on Personality Yoda, because they represent 43% of people, and they're usually the ones that the world needs to hear more of. So remember the most important thing to understand with your kids. 2 things. I will ask you, Ray, if you remember them, but that will be difficult because you might forget and look embarrassed on live television. But here's your chance. Do you remember the 2 fundamentals of parenting?
Yeah, one is to make sure that they know that they're unconditionally loved.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot the second one, but it was more around going to their world and was that it? It was going to their world and making sure that you're understanding them.
We're listening to part of it. You got at least a B- in my examination. So well done.
As a pioneer, not good enough.
So here's the key thing is that kids have to know they're loved unconditionally, and it's okay to be them. So that's the 2 key fundamental things. So when we're talking about how do you recognize behaviors, we're not dealing with an exact science, by the way. I'm giving you clues, but please be careful. The most important thing is if kids are grown up going, it's okay to be me, and they haven't been conformed by the fact that you want them to be something else, you should recognize these behaviors. So nurture, if you've got nurturer children, you'll find that they are incredibly keen to please you, that they're always thinking of other people, they're selfless, they're kind, they're compassionate, they're always looking out for the children who are not included, they're very conscientious with their schoolwork, they're very conscientious with friendships and making those work, they have a people-pleasing tendency, they love authority figures to think they're doing a great job, and you will never, ever have to worry about them trying to work hard and fulfill their potential, because every nurturer always struggles with thinking that others are better than they are, when actually that is not true. Nurturers are universally loved. It's really unusual to find an unpopular nurturer child. They're very emotionally intelligent, very empathetic. People know they care from a very early age. So that's kind of like when you have a nurturer child, it's kind of you if you have that one first, you'll often be tempted to think that's what all children are like, and then you get a pioneer and it all goes horribly wrong. So there's nurturer, that's how you know. Creative, so creative children, you'll find that they are introverted by nature, so they will recharge often away from people. They will often want to spend time in their head. They're always looking towards the future. So you'll find with the creatives that once they find something they're interested in or fascinated in, whether it's technology, whether it's ideas, whether it's future thinking, that the creative is always wanting to explore how things could be better, how things could be different, how could we upgrade these things. You give them a Lego and they'll build different things every time, because to do the same thing again is not particularly exciting for creatives. So creatives will almost always be very conscientious in their learning and very, very committed to doing the best they can. So they have a people-pleasing component to who they are, but they won't always follow standard operating procedures. They won't automatically do what someone asks them to do if they think there's a better way of doing it. And that's one of those pieces you have to be careful of. Most creatives often struggle to communicate clearly their ideas. You'll often find that they get frustrated at times that they can see how things could be, but they can't seem to communicate it in a way others will hear. And if particularly the creative thinker or the creative pioneer, they'll often be seen as potential troublemakers at school, because they will always challenge incompetence. And they're always asking the question, well, why? Why are we doing that? Could it be better? And sometimes if they're dealing with a conformist culture, they can often appear to be the ones who won't do what they're told. And certainly those creative pioneers or INTPs, if they don't respect the competence of a teacher, that's another massive clue that things are going on. So creatives are very usually artistic, creative. They love the ability just to be able to see how the world can be different. And they're often depth people when it comes to friendships and relationships. They don't have lots and lots. They don't need to be the center of attention, but they'll often be at the very center of a group of people that they want to share life and the same values and ideals with. So there's a few clues for creative. Ray, if you want to jump in at any time, otherwise I'm just going to keep on going while we're on.
No, it's awesome. It's super helpful. So we've done 3.
Yep.
So keep going with the final 2 because I'm intrigued.
So guardian, remember, guardian is the champion of truth and things done properly. So your guardian children will always ask questions. They will always want to know why. They won't just believe it because you tell them it's true. Guardians will want to know that they can do the research themselves and come to their own conclusions. So they're very organized people. They're usually very diligent students, and you'll find that they will always show their workings in how they do things, because they want to make sure that they are following the rules. Guardians like rules, they like structure, they like to know that things are repeating processes. They often think they can make them better, interestingly, and they are fiercely loyal and deeply committed to being part of teams. So for a guardian, when a guardian child says, leave it with me, I've got this covered, you will actually know that they will deliver that. So a guardian will only promise something when they're absolutely sure that they've understood what you're asking of them. So again, we'll come on to, if you're a parent with a different voice, sometimes the guardian's questioning of, well, why? What about this? What about that? It's not that they're flouting your authority. It's not they're challenging who you are. What they're really doing is they're being who they are, which is to go, before I'm prepared to move forward, I need to be clear in my own mind that I've established what the success criteria are. When a guardian takes on something and says, I'm going to achieve this, guardians are the most disciplined at actually achieving the objectives that they've set out to do, because it's then a matter of personal honor and their code of integrity. So guardians don't lie, by the way. Guardians will tell you the truth, even if it's unpopular, but they won't always play nice with other kids all the time, because if someone challenges a value or someone does things that are wrong, they will call it, even if it's slightly uncomfortable in the room relationally in that process. So that's how you know perhaps your child is a first voice guardian. Remember, by the way, that they speak all 5 voices. All of us do, but the foundational voice shapes primarily how the others are heard. So I'm trying to give you some clues. That means you might have some things you can look at and compare. There are obviously nuances, because a guardian pioneer is different to a guardian nurturer. But last one, and then I've achieved my first objective, Ray, this week, which was to actually at least give people what they asked for last time, but apparently I didn't do. So how do you know if you have a connector child, first voice connector? Connectors are very extroverted characters. They love being around other children. They love being with people. They love creativity. They love being part of a band of brothers and sisters that are always trying to do things. Connectors really are not good on their own. So they don't like being on their own. I mean, social media means now, even kind of Izzy, my connector, if she's alone at home, she'll always be FaceTiming or wanting to talk to somebody, because connectors are not usually good at just playing on their own. But what they are is unbelievably creative, naturally inclusive of other people, gatherers of people around causes. They'll often look for pulling in the children maybe who are not at the center of things, because a connector wants everyone to be as excited about the opportunities they are. So really good team players, naturally collaborative, very inquisitive when it comes to learning, and often lovers of being on stage, lovers of things that allow them to use their charisma and charm to be able to go after something that they think is really important. So everyone usually loves connectors. They're often the ones that teachers will sometimes suggest it might be good for them to put their hand up before they start talking, but we love their enthusiasm. We love their commitment and passion to the learning process. And life is never dull with a connector, because they're always creating games and ways of playing and drawing everyone else in. And if people are a little bit down in the home, it's often the connector, the children, that go, come on, why don't we do this? Or why don't we do that? So they're inherently positive. Their glass is always at least half full. And often they would rather go from one activity to another activity. So school is perfect for them, because it's basically people all day for as many activities as they can do. So there you go, Ray. That is my best description I can give you of a characteristic or pen sketch of what you might look for in the behaviors of your children to kind of go, which is their first voice. Now, here's the key. None of us just are one voice. You'll often see nuances, particularly of second voice as well. So don't look for a purist model, but usually a combination of the two that they think are most like them will give you the ability to go, oh, that's how my child is wired. That's the way that they prefer to engage with the world. That's the way they were made in their nature. Once you know that, it's so much easier to be a good parent than just assuming they're like you and that what you would like to do, they would like to do as well. So there we go, Ray. That's the best I can give you. Hope that's okay.
I love it. And I have so many more questions around, which we'll dig into later, around how you get the best at, or tips for parenting each of those different voices once you've recognized what they are. Before we do that, you mentioned around the first and second voice dynamic. And I've got a really good question here from Mark. So Mark is a Pioneer Connector and then has a guardian creative teenage son. What advice would you give him? What would be the natural synergies and conflict in that relationship?
Fantastic. So Mark, good to have you on the show. Thank you for doing that. So as a Pioneer Connector, the first thing I'd say is you are used to controlling your world. And basically, usually you would be inviting people to join you in the activities that you really like doing. So one of the challenges for a Pioneer Connector father is you will usually be a larger than life charismatic figure, probably successful in what you do. And your son is probably in some ways almost you're kind of like a hero character. But the danger will be is you will want him to join you in what you're doing, rather than necessarily ask the question, well, what would he most like to do? So as a guardian creative, the bad news is many of the things that your son is passionate about may not be what you are passionate about, because a guardian creative is what we call an ISTP, and an ISTP loves physical adventure. They'll want you to take them up a mountain. They'll want you to go and do some physical endurance feat or camp outside all night, or because the ISTP or the guardian creative loves the physical engagement and the challenge and the competition of engaging with the world around them. So they often like sports, they often like shooting, they often like those kind of adrenaline fueled, but often on their own or with a small group of people. So the Pioneer Connector usually wants to take a whole tribe of people with them when they go out because they need people. So to do depth relationship with your son for an extended period of time will almost always challenge your inherent selfishness as the Pioneer Connector. So remember last week I was saying the art of parenting, if you really, really want to connect and do it well, you have to learn to understand what is the world that your child lives in and loves to live in, and to go and join them there. Now, in the early life, you'll get away with it. But ultimately, particularly with your teenage children, learning how to go and be in their world with them and celebrate that with them, even if it's not your passion yourself, is a really, really important thing. So guardian creatives, adventure, physical challenge, depth relationship, often out in nature, not necessarily wanting to be in big crowds, or certainly not necessarily wanting to share you with lots of other people. Depth, authenticity, physical challenge, climb a mountain, shoot things, ski things, jump out of things. That's probably the way in which you can connect and they go, oh my goodness, my dad is amazing because my dad appreciates me for who I am and is prepared to come and be with me, even though I know it's not necessarily his absolute passion. So Mark, thanks for the question. Thanks for being honest. I hope that is helpful.
Awesome. Following on in that vein, I have another great question from Derek. So I'm going to put that on the screen. He's another Pioneer Connector. Gosh, all the best people, they're everywhere. He's done as a connector, a creative connector nurturer. How can he build a relationship in a healthy way? And what are the pitfalls he needs to be aware of in terms of motivating and parenting him?
Well, Derek,
he's 20 years old.
Yeah, I don't believe that for a minute because I know Derek Nunley and he's not. But there we go. Derek, the first thing is listen to my answer to the last one, because Pioneer Connectors are very good at making the world revolve around them and inviting other people to join them in it. I know that because that is me. So if you've got a creative connector nurturer son, that is an INFJ in Myers-Briggs language. So what you'll find with them is they are probably look at you as their hero, and they will often assume that they will simply have to come to be with you if they want to build the relationship. You're dealing with someone who's incredibly clever, has a passion for learning, wants to master whatever it is they're reading, studying. They often are huge lovers of history, because as they read the past, they're able to shape their visions of the future. You both share a love of visioning and shaping the future, but actually learning to maybe read the same books they're reading, learning to engage with some of the passions and the things that they are committed to. But the most annoying thing, I'm afraid, for you Pioneer Connectors are, you'll find that your creative connector nurturer, one of their primary love languages is quality time. They want you to spend time with them with no apparent agenda and with no apparent task, simply the depth connection of relationship of just being together and sharing experience and sharing learning, sharing visioning and shaping the future for values and the people. And in the end, they'll always want you as well. Some of the stuff we do with Giant, INFJs love that stuff, because it's always about, how do I help others be the best they can be? You'll find that the creative connector nurturer is quite selfless in the way that they give of themselves for others. So helping them accept the fact that that is really, really awesome, particularly for a boy. They're not always the most, macho kill, how do I win the football game? There's often a creative sensitivity and an empathetic skill set that goes off the chart. So you'll find your son is far more sensitive than you are, Derek, and you can often learn a huge amount from the way they see the world. I almost invite them to mentor me. I'd encourage you the same thing. Teach me, son, how can I actually connect and be more empathetic and caring? How do you see the world? Why is it that environmental issues, why is it that injustice for the poor, why is it that there are things in our social fabric and communities? You'll find that they're the type of causes that your son will probably want you to join him on, even if you yourself would probably rather sit in, drink beer and watch the football. Sorry, Derek.
That was awesome. So, okay, I'd love to hear more around tips for parenting the different voice types. Can you give us a quick overview or quick high level? Yeah, here's some great tips for pioneers, connectors, guys, etc.
So pioneers want to win, and they are ruthlessly competitive from a very, very early age. Now, if you are not wired like that, you will find that incredibly difficult. So knowing it's not they're deliberately being annoying or competing with friends. So allow them to compete, allow them to win, channel that desire for mastery and competence. And in some ways, recognize that the more you challenge a pioneer, almost the more they love rising to the challenge. You do that for some voices, by the way, and it will go horribly wrong. But with a pioneer, offer them often sometimes a real tangible reward. Ask them to go, if you achieve this in your exams, or if you achieve this particular outcome, what would a reward you'd be excited about look like? So pioneers respond to a desire for competence, mastery, and independence. So don't try and micromanage your pioneer children. They won't thank you for it, and they won't back down. So beware that they will often die on the hill, and particularly in that kind of 9 to 12 age, where they're trying to work out the barriers and the boundaries for pioneers. They want to know, their desire is for independence, and they're not wanting to just simply do what you ask them. So sometimes you have to be very, very careful and shape it, distract them, offer the growth opportunity to go, what do you want to be best at? How do I help you win? But teaching them all the way along the line from that place of influence, which is, well, not everyone has to win at all costs. How do you actually teach them how to connect with people at the same time? So that's a bit of pioneer. With connectors, I always say to people, find the cause or the passion that actually is already in them. So you will only have to listen. You can ask a connector, what are you passionate about? If we were going to invest our time, our money, and our resources as a family, what causes do you think would be a great thing to get involved in? What are you passionate about? Because connectors, if you can help them from an early age to realize that actually they can make a difference in the world, They always have dreams far bigger than sometimes you think are possible. But the key is with connected children is to keep encouraging them to dream and not get lost in the micro detail, often of passing exams and doing all the things which a lot of schooling is about. So yes, they have to do those things. But the other thing I say with connectors are show them one way that they can discipline talent over an extended period of time. Connectors are sickeningly good at most things, but they'll often struggle to discipline that talent for a long period of time. So, you know, you've heard before, Izzy learned the piano for 10 years, but that disciplining of talent means she's able to do it now. So you don't help your connectors by letting them jump from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. At least one thing in their life, help them become a master or a mistress of it, because then they can apply that learning in the rest of their lives. But make life fun. They'll want the house full of people. Surround them with people who inspire them as well. That's one of my tricks for the connectors in my world. I keep introducing them to people who I think will inspire them to want to change the world with them. There's always that almost passionate cause in most connectors. Guardians often like to do things that are physical, manual, getting their hands dirty. They like to build things. They like to take things down. So in some ways, again, if that's not your passion as a parent, the default is to go, well, I won't do that. But again, with guardians, letting them in many ways be rewarded for what they achieve, celebrate the fact that actually you really see and recognize their commitment, their discipline, their trustworthiness, their loyalty, help them usually in the ability to connect with other people who are not as task focused as they are. But you'll often find they love the outdoors, they love building things, they love adventure, they love sport, and they're actually quite competitive. Quite competitive people. So there's some thoughts for guardians. Creatives, again, celebrate their creativity. Now, find out what medium of creativity that they're most passionate about and give them, if you can, the opportunities to explore that, let them read widely, introduce them, take them places, inspire their belief that the world can be a better place. So if they love space, they love astronomy, or they whatever it is that they're passionate about, if they know you love them and you're interested in them, asking them what they would most love to master, what would they most love to read with you, what would they most love you to join them in learning and exploring and pioneering the future, even if it's not necessarily your passion. And in some ways with those creatives, again, just bear in mind what they say out loud first isn't usually what they mean. Helping creatives communicate and celebrate is often two of those things. So nurturers, I'm not sure whether I did nurture, Ray, so you'll have to come back on and not.
I didn't. Let's go for nurturers.
So with nurturers, again, you almost have to keep encouraging them to believe how amazing they are. So every nurturer has this ability to almost limit the area they think they can be expert in, because it's never about them. It's always about other people and who they might let down. So you can tell nurturers every single day how amazing they are, why you love them, why you believe in them. Celebrate their care of other people. I often would give money, little bits of money when it comes to, hey, if we're going to give money to charity or give money to whatever it is, allow the nurturers to be part of that decision. Because for a nurturer, one of their great desires is, how do I help care and provide for those who don't have what I have? Where are the opportunities to serve in the local community? Where are the opportunity to be, in many ways, the kind of hands and feet rather than the words that help create families, help build communities, and celebrate them for who they are? Because actually without nurturers, none of our communities would function the way they actually do. The amount of unseen sacrificial service that nurturers do, and you'll watch it from a very, very early age. But you've got to keep building their confidence. You've got to keep telling them how amazing they are. Got to keep celebrating the achievements they make and not letting them just settle for the areas that actually they think they're already good at. So there's a few thoughts on how to parent nurture as well, Ray. I feel like I've spoken a lot today, so forgive me.
No, but such helpful tips and all of those. I feel like I'm not a parent yet, that when I will be able to be rewatching this episode on repeat, taking notes of everything in terms of how to parent kids. To wrap us up, I have one final question from Jane. So this is really talking about friction between children. Friction between kids or siblings. So she's got a guardian nurturer daughter and a creative pioneer son. How would you recommend she deals with clashes between them?
Yes, neither would actually back down very easily in that particular scenario. So you've got the INTP and you've got the ISTJ. So both of them are desiring of truth, and actually where you have the ability, Jane, to bring logic. So if it really has broken down, then in the end you can sit them both down and almost treat it like a mediation, and the ability to hear both sides and to exercise almost like a judicial function, because both of them will respect logic and authority if they've been heard. That's one of those things that's really helpful. But again, you'll find that both are quite competitive, but in different ways. You'll often find that it's because they're not understood. And actually, it's probably often because, kids always compete with each other. They want to find out where they sit in the pecking order. But it's that classic thing of going, those are very different characters. They need a different support and challenge. I would suspect that if they really fall out, what I would do is I would call time out. And as I said, I'd bring them in, I'd sit them down. I'd literally treat it like a judicial court. I'd say, okay, guardian nurturer, what's your perspective of the truth here? And I wouldn't let the creative pioneer speak. And then I'd let the creative pioneer give their perspective on where things have broken down and gone wrong. And I would literally create that environment where they can hear each other. And then actually, I'd be quite prepared to suggest, I'd ask them, having heard all the sides, what they would both recommend happen. Because you'll find if you involve them in the solution, then they will own it. I would say to them, well, I'm the mother in this case, or I'm the father. So ultimately, I am going to make the final decision, but you will be heard. I will take the time to make sure you hear each other. And in the end, I will make a final decision. But the more you can involve them in the process, the more you'll find they buy into your solution and they respect your competence. Both of those characters are very justice, competence based. So they want to know, even if they disagree with your decision, that at least there is logic and rational order behind why you've made the decision you have. So that's what I would suggest, Jane. See how it goes and let us know.
I love it. Okay, so that kind of brings us to a close of our time together today. As always, we would love to hear your thoughts on any topics or questions or scenarios that you'd like us to cover in Personality Yoda. So please do send those to the email address on the screen below. We'd love to hear from you. Next week, we are continuing our theme, talking about parenting, but this time, next time, we're going to be talking about what impact does our own parenting style have on our kids. So rather than talking about our kids and them, we're really talking about us and the impact that has on other people or on our children. So before we go, Steve, any last thoughts, any wisdom that you'd like to share, any goodbyes?
Well, I've given you the best I have in a very short period of time. So I think the key thing is, most people, when they hear this for the first time, go, oh my goodness, this is far too complicated. The lovely thing is, if you actually take the time to learn some of the things I've shared over the last couple of weeks, it doesn't take long to become competent enough that you can actually recognize the behaviors in your children and the children of elsewhere. Human behavior is very predictable where children have grown up in a loving environment that really affirms who they are. And the earlier you can understand why they behave the way they do, the greater the opportunity you have to establish those relational foundations, which when they begin to stretch their wings a little bit and they want to become more independent and peer pressure is as big an issue as you are, actually everything you put in the bank early is capital that you can spend in the future. So parenting is incredibly difficult. It's much easier to lead a team than it is to run a family. But in the end, your leadership of home will always usually define the great leaders from just the good leaders, because it's the place where if you don't have tools, it will not go well, because you just telling them what to do will never deliver the outcomes that you hope it would.
Love it. Amazing. Great piece of advice to finish on. Awesome. So we will see you same time, same place next week to talk more about parenting and the impact that has on those around us. Have a fantastic week, and we will see you shortly. Bye.
Bye, everyone.